So we try and make sure you've got a really clean and uncluttered chart view. Where there's that 3D button at the top, on the top right, if you touch the 3D, then it drops the chart view down. We've got between 15 and 26 knots. So it shows you the gust, it shows you the direction, the date at the bottom if I want to see an animation of what the wind's going to be doing. So I can save the route. And then on Saturday morning, I open the saved route and it will automatically update it based on the weather and tide on Saturday morning.
David, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to meet you all, and Ed and the Ardent team. Thank you for asking me to join in. It's really cool. Yeah, so I work for Navvy now. I've been working on the water probably since I was 16 years old when I left Yorkshire and joined the Royal Navy. So I learned to navigate on paper charts when I was 16, and then did my yacht master years and years later, my yacht master theory. Did it in York one evening a week through the winter to try and get me through the winter. There's no such thing as online back then. Otherwise, I would have been doing it exactly the same way you guys are doing it. I worked on the Clip Around the World yacht race for 15 years. So I raced around the world. Sounds like Ed maybe did the challenge race when he said he went the wrong way round.
No, I was just mumbling under my breath. If when you get to know me, you'd realise I would never sail around the world the wrong way. That sounds like too much hard work.
Yeah, I thought the same. So I did the Clipper race, which is going around the world in theory the right way. But you guys all sail, so you'll know every time you go on the water, the wind's always coming from where you want to be anyway. So there isn't really a right or a wrong way. And then I've been working with Navvy now for nearly 5 years. The app itself has been around for about 7 years now. And it was set up by a guy called Jelte, who actually took part in the Clipper race. He's a Dutch sailor who was living in San Francisco, working in tech. He worked for Google Maps. And he was on a racing yacht in the Pacific, looking at a chart plotter and then looking at grid files for weather and trying to look at tide tables and look at ocean currents and trying to plot a strategy for racing, and realize that when you compare technology on boats to technology in your house and in cars, there was a huge difference. So, I'm sure you all know, you get into your car, you plug your phone in, you've got your music, you've got all your messages, you've got your phone itself, but you've got maps. So kind of TomTom and sat-navs and things like that are not really huge anymore, because your phone works in your car. And if you want to go from Cornwall to London, you just drop a pin in London and press go, and then Google or Apple or whichever map system you use will just tell you how to get there, and it'll work out the traffic and tell you where petrol stations are and everything that you need to know. So when Jelte, the founder of Navvy, was thinking of a navigation app, that's kind of what he wanted. Drop a pin, and everything is factored in, working out your course to steer. So fully integrated weather and tide, crossing shipping lanes at right angles, all based around the boat that you're on, making sure you're staying deep enough water, making sure you follow recommended tracks, all of those good things. With the majority of apps that were around at the time, and even still around now, many of them are just kind of point to point. So you'll drop 2 pins, and it'll give you a bearing and range, and it'll give you a very rough idea of how to get there. We give you full weather routing, but then go further than weather routing as well. There are some other factors that we take into account. So we want it to be a lot more like your sat nav in your car, using your phone. And also the good thing with that app is you can sit at home and play about with it, and you can plot your routes, plan what you're going to do at the weekend, check out the weather and tide, And then when you get to the boat, everything's there. So this is the app view that you'd get on your phone. So I'll do a run through of how it works there. I would say probably about 70% of our users use the app on a phone. It works on a tablet, it works on a PC and a Mac. But most people use their phone because it's convenient. It sits in your pocket. Wherever you are on the boat, your phone can be there. You can lock it off at a helming point with a wireless chargers and things as well. So most people are using it on their phone. So it's an easier way to do the demo. And it's using the app is literally as easy and as intuitive as using Google Maps. So you just pinch the screen, drag the map around, and you can zoom back in again, zoom out, look at any particular areas. There's a search bar at the top. So again, very much like your Google or Apple Maps, you can type in where did.
It's brave revealing your search history.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see all the places I've done demos recently, because I absolutely have not traveled to all those places recently. But we can just type in Oban, which I did because I didn't want to have to type out Tobermory, which I know is where Eddie's right now. And then it takes you to that particular place. So you can use the search bar, or you can just drag your chart and pull up any particular place that you want to be. So when you first log into and you download the app and log in, the first thing you're probably going to come up with and want to do is go into boat settings. So within boat settings, this is where the routing algorithm is driven really from here. So you choose what kind of vessel you are. So you can be a monohull if you're on a jet ski, if you're on a paddleboard. The routing algorithm will work slightly differently depending on the vessel that you choose. So if we choose a monohull, and then we choose our draft, bridge height clearance, and waterline length, we added polars probably about 2 years ago, and it's not boat specific. It's not very scientific polars, because actually most people don't really, unless you're racing, most people don't use polars too much. So it's a basic polar, but it means that you can change your wind angle. You can change your speed based on how close to the wind you can get. So you can just drag these sliders around, and this will change any ETA that you set based on the boat speed that you said you can do. In the engine settings, we can set a minimum speed to sail. So if the wind drops below a certain speed, or that we've got the tide against us, if we can't make 3 knots, you can get the app to tell you at this particular point you need to turn your engine on. If you're just out cruising and you don't really care about your speed, you can set this as low as you want, set it down to 1 knot. But if you're on a deadline, you're going somewhere, and there's you want to make sure you get there, you can prompt the app to actually remind you to turn on an engine. And then in the units, you can change your depth from feet to meters. You can change the distances, boat speeds. So you can choose and personalize all of these settings as well. So once you've got your boat settings set, this then taps into the actual routing algorithm. So now the app knows our minimum depth. It knows how much water to always keep us in, and we base it on chart datum. So it's not based on, it doesn't change depending on the height of the tide. We do it on chart datum to make sure you always have enough water under your keel. So you can set up your boat settings. There's a chat feature in here. You can chat with one of the Savvy team in here. There's an anchor alarm, offline charts. So if you're going out, depending on where you are in the world, sometimes you can be offshore and you've got a great signal. If you're around the UK, if you go more than probably quarter of a mile or less even offshore, you're going to start to lose signal. So you can download a chart area to cover where you're going to be cruising that particular day, and download the weather and the charts, and then you don't need any coverage at all. So that's kind of setting up the app. And then what we've tried to do is keep the chart view as clear as possible. So we license all of our data from in the UK from UKHO, in America from NOAA, from different hydrographic offices. Now, the important thing to know about the hydrographic offices and the charts that they focus on, it's basically they're focusing on commercial shipping, because that's where their revenue is, and that's where I guess the biggest potential incidents can happen with commercial ships. They're bigger, they need more detail, and there's a lot more legislation around them. So there's a whole bunch of layers that you get from the hydrographic office. And you could just put absolutely everything into this chart view, and some of our competitors do. So there are other leisure boating apps out there where, if you look at exactly the same view here in the Solent, you'll see thousands of things that are not necessarily relevant to a leisure boater. So things like a submarine cable in the Solent that's 100 meters deep. You don't really need to know about that, because you can't anchor there. It's not a navigational hazard for you. So things like that we try and take away. So we try and make sure you've got a really clean and uncluttered chart view, so you can see all of the things that are really important to you. And if they're not important, we take them out. And they're a bit flexible. We'll have users give us feedback and ask for certain things, and then we can add in again if we need to. We took out a lot of land features a year or so ago, and lots of our users said actually they like the features on land, because when they go to a new marina, they can find the post office, the supermarket, the cafe, and the pub. So that you can do all of that within the app as well. So we've got all the things that you would expect to see, all your channel markers, buoys, depth contours. Up here you can see seagrass. So we put a seagrass layer in last year, working with the Ocean Conservation Trust. So you can look at, do you want to anchor here? Anchoring in seagrass is not great for seagrass, and seagrass is really important for the environment. So you can, if we show you where the seagrass is, you can make a decision. Do you want to anchor there or anchor a little bit further down the coast?
There's definitely a right answer and a not so right answer to that question.
About whether you want to anchor there.
Yeah.
and depends on what's going on, right? So if if it's an emergency situation, you anchor where you need to anchor to stay safe. If you got all the time in the world, it's a really good example actually down here, and it's really here's the next one along. So Studland Bay is massively political at the moment. There's an awful lot of controversy. So that we've put in these eco mooring buoys. So there's a whole bunch of eco moorings, and that they've put into Studland Bay because they don't want people really to anchor here. But you can see there are lots of places where you can anchor, so you can choose to just not anchor in the middle of a seagrass bed and find somewhere else. You can use eco moorings, or you can anchor just a bit further along the bay there.
We've got some beautiful seagrass in one corner of the bay here in Tobermory, and it's my favourite place to go snorkeling. So I'm quite appreciative of it. But yeah, there's times when you're not going to care so much, but it is nice if we can avoid it, as it's really cool to see it on the chart like that.
Yeah, and it's I think generally boaters are pretty environmentally aware. We love being on the water. We like to be in a nice environment, and so we kind of do what we can to help it flourish. So the other things we can do here. So where there's that 3D button at the top, on the top right, if you touch the 3D, then it drops the chart view down to give you more of a kind of a heads up. By using two fingers on your phone screen, you can tilt the chart around. So if I'm sailing into Poole Harbour and I want to drop it into 3D, and then tilt the chart view around, so I can see all of the channel markers. Now, even if I haven't plotted a route, I would have my position on the on the chart here in the app, you get a little green arrow to show you where you are. So you can see exactly which buoy you're alongside. If you just touch on the buoy, it'll tell you this is a lateral buoy, it's a cam-shaped port, flashing once every 2 seconds. If they have names, it'll bring up the name. So this is Parks and Yacht Club's buoy. So as you're navigating, it's really easy just using your using your eyes to figure out exactly which buoy you're alongside. You can know where you are all the time, and then you can see just under where it's got that 2D. Every time I tilt the chart around, that north compass is moving. So if I want to go back to north up again, I just need to touch that, and it automatically takes us back to the north up, and then touch on 2D, and it takes us back to just the regular chart view. The round circle button down at the bottom right there, where it's got the arrow. This is like your GPS position. So it's going to ruin the demo for a second, but if I just press that, it's going to jump to just north of Copenhagen, which is where I am. But if you're out on the water, this is what you see. So you get your green arrow. It shows you exactly where you are. And if you press start, you're then going into full kind of more chart plotter GPS recording mode. So if you press start, it then up at the top, it's got your course over the ground. It would show your speed at the bottom. And then if you press that little arrow that's in the bottom right-hand side, you can then look at the weather and the tide where you are. I'm on land, so there isn't any tide, but you can see what the weather's going to be doing and scroll through the weather.
Cracking.
So that effectively is what you would see. So you see that, you see your location when you're out on the water, and that's always telling you where you are. Most devices have inbuilt GPS. Some tablets don't. You can if you're buying them, you make sure you get a tablet with a GPS fitted, but actually most phones have them. Yeah, let's go back to this. If you press on it, it's dropping a point. So if you do a long press, so go back to onto the water. Again, this is a new feature that we launched about a couple of weeks ago. If you long press on the chart, so you just put your finger on the chart, hold it, and then it drops a pin that tells you this is the lat long of that particular position. Do you want to save it, or do you want to navigate to it? So for plotting routes, that's a really easy way now to do that. The next circle down, where it's got those different squares. So this is where we've put the different chart types and the chart details in here. So if you want to switch your view for any reason, everything is kept inside this one tab, so it's not cluttering up the screen. So if we click onto the night view, and we're out sailing at night, then you automatically, because you don't want to ruin your night vision, it changes to a night view for you. We've got two different satellite views, so depending on where you are in the world, there's a different quality with the different satellite providers. So we've got two different satellite views in here, and the satellite view is really good for shallows, for kind of spotting sandbanks. You start to get kind of shading and details that maybe you don't see quite as well on the regular chart.
That's actually what I was using just this weekend. Is that Maxar satellite images are so good. I quite like to explore new places, find new places to anchor.
Yeah,
and chucking the satellite image on is great for doing just that, spotting the rocks and spotting the sandbanks that aren't necessarily charted in these.
Yeah, exactly, because some of them move around, right? You know, the sandbanks, since the last survey, especially around harbour entrances, some of the sandbanks do move around. So yeah, it's a great way to figure that out. And then the other thing I mentioned earlier on about some of the other data integration points. So if you click on wind, you can then see you've got the wind animation, which is overlaid on the chart. I can move the date at the bottom if I want to see an animation of what the wind's going to be doing. So at this particular point, at 5:30 Thursday, I'm definitely not going out sailing. So you can see the wind direction. If you zoom right out when you've got the wind on, it gives you a really good visualization, because you can start to see where the wind's veering and backing, and where the weather systems are coming from. Then if you turn the wind off and we turn on tidal streams, then you can see this is the tide. So this is the tidal flow. So we get our tidal data from different sources, but the tidal flow data, this is showing you the direction of the tide. And again, I can pull it through to see where it's going to be. If we think might want to go sailing at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, this is going to be the tidal flow at 11 o'clock on Tuesday. If I click on this weather button down at the bottom left, and it'll tell me just touch anywhere in the chart, and it then shows you the weather for that location. So we've got two different models within here. So there's GFS, which is a kind of a global standard model. ECMWF mixed. It comes from a company in Switzerland called Meteomatics. So they started out their meteorology, primarily focusing on aviation and commercial shipping. So Navvy was the first leisure boating organization that they work with. And what Meteomatics do is they blend about 26 different models. So that as a user, I don't have to choose which model I want to use. I don't need to be a meteorologist. They will show me the best model for the particular part of the world that I'm in, and they blend them together. So if we switch between GFS and mixed, you'll start to see some of the wind speeds and heights and gusts and things like that are changing a little bit. So there are two weather sources that we've got for that. But when you touch it on the chart, it will tell you what the wind speed is at that particular point. Again, if I touch somewhere else, and it moves to there. So we've got between 15 and 26 knots. So it shows you the gust, it shows you the direction. And then if I drag up that bottom sheet, just put your finger on it and pull it up, you can then see a lot more detail. And I can scroll through, so I can see the weather. Again, if I'm thinking maybe Tuesday around lunchtime would be a good time to go out. What's the weather going to be doing then? It's still pretty gusty, but sky's quite clear. And you can drag that right through for 2 weeks. And then
I like that you get two different sources of weather there, because that's something we always tell our students. Check two different weather forecasts from two different places. If they agree, there's a good chance they'll be right.
Yeah. And the other thing I was taught when I first started sailing, the first thing to do to check the weather is look out the window.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
Because we kind of forget to just look and see what's going on around us as well, because this is a forecast, and forecasts will vary. They're really accurate forecasts, but they are just forecasts. And then the same with tide. If I click on tide, I just need to touch anywhere on the chart view, and it drops the pin there. And then it tells me there's currently a 1 knot tide here, and it gives me the tidal curve, so I can see. Just get back to where we are now. So we're kind of pretty much at high tide. Low tide's going to be just after 9:30, and you can see your tidal range and get a prediction on the times of high and low tide. And again, scroll through for a couple of weeks for that. We try to keep it as intuitive as possible. So even just playing around with it, you kind of get a really good idea. A new feature that we just added a couple of weeks ago is AIS. So you can now click on any of these boats that are transmitting their AIS data, and you can see what the boat is, when the position was last updated, its course and its speed. And again, it gives you a really good idea. If you're out there, just approaching Poole Harbour, and you want to see Who else is around? I'm guessing the one in here is probably the ferry. Yeah, so that's the ferry that's going backwards and forwards there. You can see the other vessels, obviously just the ones that are transmitting AIS data. So if we go into the planning and the routing, so if I want to drop a pin at the back of Poole Harbour here, and then I want to go to somewhere near Yarmouth, what it does there, that gives you your, I haven't plotted the route yet. It's given me a skeleton route. It's told me that the depths are going to be between 20 and 30 meters most of the way. It's 22.5 nautical miles, and it gives me the lat and long at each location. And then if I click plot route, within 2 seconds, it's worked out a full route for how to get from the back of Poole Harbour to just off Yarmouth. And if you zoom in, you can see all the tidal vectors, because we know what the tide's doing, so we can give you a course to steer, and it corrects for tidal drift. And if you pull this bottom sheet up, just use your finger on the phone screen and pull that up, you can then see the detail at each point. So we're going to slick line at 9:30. It's quite shallow because I chose to start right at the back of Poole Harbour to make life as hard as I could for myself. And then we're going to bear away. And a minute after that, you can bear away again. The wind's increasing. We've got a cross tide. We've got a speed over the ground, a course over the ground, course to steer. And then every time we need to change a point of sail or maneuver, it's going to tell us. And then you can see here, it's got wind is not favourable to sail because we set our minimum sailing speed. It's telling us that within 25 minutes of leaving, we're going to have to motor for a little while because there's not that much wind and we've got the tide's not helping us. So we need to motor. And then at 3 minutes past 10, we can kill the motor and start sailing again. And the other important thing about the tide is this is a 3.5 hour voyage. So it's not working out the tide all the way through from our start point because the tide's changing constantly. So by the time we're getting up here into the Western Solent, the routing is using the tide at that time, not the tide at the beginning. I know when I did my Yachtmaster theory myself, we kind of worked out one tidal drift. So you at the start of if you're making a long passage, you would kind of only try and do it once, whereas within Savvy Navvy, it's working it out constantly. So as time's passing and the tide changes, we're taking the new tide into account. So it's working dynamically. If I press start, it would then hit record. It would drop down to that kind of more heads up view. You'd get your green arrow to show you where your boat was. And then if you're off course in the same way that Google Maps will say you've missed a turning recalculating, we can tell you you're off course. Your ETA is going to change because you're going faster or slower than you estimated at the beginning. And if you need a new course, you can hit update, or you can just carry on because you're just having a nice sail and you don't really mind that you're not following the track exactly. If I click on that more button at the end, I can do a couple of things. So I can clear the route completely. I can modify it. So if I click on modify, then I can just drag one of these pins around. Or I can add more if I decide I'm not going to go into Yarmouth, I want to get into bottom of Southampton water. I can add another pin, just plot that route and it immediately updates it. I can save the route. So if this is something I do a lot, or it's something I'm planning to do at the weekend, for example, I can save the route. And then on Saturday morning, I open the saved route and it will automatically update it based on the weather and tide on Saturday morning. So you don't need to replot your route because the conditions have changed. The app will do that for you. I can share it. So if I'm going out sailing with some friends, I can click share and I can send the route to them to say, we're going out on Saturday. Do you fancy it? The weather looks great. This is what I'm going to do. I can export it. So you can send the route as a GPX file to a chart plotter, or reverse it. So if I've got to the bottom of Southampton water and I've realized I need to go home, if I click on reverse, it automatically changes the route to get me back to Poole. And again, that's working with wind and tide to get back, and you can see as you zoom in all the different tidal vectors. The other button that I didn't mention before, so that little ruler that's in the circle kind of middle of the screen at the right. So if you click on that, it's basically a distance measurement tool. So you can drag the middle of the circle, put it on your boat, or if you're trying to measure between 2 points, you can put it wherever you like, really. And then with that outer circle, I can figure out if this is where I am now. I know the entrance to Poole Harbour is 1.1 nautical mile. It's bearing 321. So if I'm just trying to take a rough fix to figure out how far away a certain headland is, or a certain buoy, or a certain if there's a rock, a shallow, if there's something there, then I can really quickly measure bearing and range from that. And then the final button along the bottom, in that saved, so you can save a point. So these are all the points I've saved in the past where I've dropped a waypoint. So I can go back to any of these points, just click on it. It's going to take me back to wherever I was at the time. So you can tell I was looking at something here in Croatia, and then later on I did a demo last week to some people who were up near just south of Philadelphia. If you click on that, it'll take you back to that particular waypoint that you dropped. The routes that you've planned, so these are all the routes that I've planned in the past. And if I click on one of these routes and click on plot route, it's now updated it. So this is the live route based on the weather and tide right now, not based on when I first plotted it, which was quite a while ago. And then the tracks, this is what you record. So when you've been out on the water and you've recorded your passage, that's saved in here as well. I mentioned offline. So if you go into offline, which is up here in this top menu, so offline, you can see all of the offline charts that I've saved in the past, or I can download a new one. So if I download it, you then just decide I'm going to come out of Portsmouth, and I'm just going to be messing around in this part of the Solent. So this is the chart area that I want for today. I'm only going out for the day, so I'll choose 1 day of weather. You can increase it up to 4 days. So if you're cruising along a distance, or you want more weather because you're going to anchor, you're going to stay out, you can go up to 4 days and just click on download. And then it's saving this chart pack onto your device. So you don't need any signal. You don't need to worry about losing mobile coverage, Wi-Fi, anything else. It'll just download it, and then it's on your phone. So you can do everything from a navigation point of view that we just ran through without any coverage. And then the next time you come back into port, if you click on update, it will then redo the weather, because the charts are unlikely to change drastically in the space of a few days or a week. They might do. And if there's a difference, if there's been an update on the chart, you would get that as well. But it's going to update the weather for you. Oh, it's got 122 megabytes for the map and 1 megabyte for the weather. So it's not going to kill your phone either. It's not going to take up a ton of data. And then you've got the update button. So I can update it if the weather I think has changed, or I can delete it if I don't want to keep it. And then you can really easily, just by pressing on these 3 dots, you can update. So that will again give you the new weather. I can rename it. So if I want to give it a memorable name, or I can delete it if I've decided I'm not going to need that or use it anymore. A couple of the other things that you can do. So I showed you before where you can click on one of the buoys and it'll tell you this is the particular buoy that you're looking at. So it'll give you the details of the different buoys. You can do the same with marinas. So where you've got these blue, the blue circles. So this is Haslar Marina. If you click on the marina and then just pull up that bottom sheet. So I can, if I want to go to Haslar, I can now just click navigate to, and it'll work out a route from wherever I am into Haslar Marina. But if you pull up for the details, it tells you, okay, you've got to call them on channel 80. This is their phone number. That's their email address. They have 500 berths. I put my draft at 2 meters, so I know I can definitely get in here, and I can see they've got all the amenities that I need. And also, if there are any user reviews, then you can see user reviews. So see what other people have said about the marina when they've been into it.
One of the things I like most about Savvy Navvy is I feel like every time I open it, or every other time I open it, there's a new feature. You guys are always working on it and improving it, which is awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of the new features come from users. So, we get feedback from users who say, it'd be really nice to have a total miles that I've sailed in a really easy format. I don't want to go through all my tracks and add them up myself. And now somebody said it to me, I'm sitting there thinking, well, I wouldn't do that either. But if there was a button I could press and it told me, then that would be a great thing to do. So this is the kind of feedback where we develop features based on what people are asking for. And obviously we can't do everything because, there'll be a million and one things people ask for. But when you get enough feedback about the same thing, when it's just a really obvious one, like that question you just got, Ed, then that's how we develop the app.
Well, this has been fantastic. I've learned a couple of things myself. I've been following along with Savvy Navvy on my lap. Brilliant. Thank you so much, David.
Pleasure. Really nice to meet you all and help out. It's cool.
Okay, Charlie, when the house bears about 270 degrees.
To work out our distance from the lighthouse and use that.
We might be perfectly on track, but if we're not on time...
Just have a look. I've got my phone here at the effects it has on our steering compass.
So our echo sound is working. We can find a contour and follow it nicely into port.
Our left hand is pointing towards the centre of the lull.